Welcome to the iHistory channel. Today we delve into an intriguing yet crucial topic: social division and isolation. It's a concept that has been used strategically throughout history, creating walls between people and severing the common threads that bind us as humans. In the vast tapestry of human history, patterns of social division and isolation are woven deeply into the fabric of our societies. From ancient times to the present day, these ideologies have played a significant role, shaping the course of civilizations, nations, and the lives of individuals. Let's consider the concept of social division. It's a mechanism that categorizes us into different classes, groups, or factions. These divisions can be based on a range of factors: wealth, race, gender, sexuality, ethnicity, culture, and more. The divisions can create a perception of us versus them, fracturing societies into isolated fragments. Isolation, on the other hand, is a strategy often employed to keep these fragments under control. It's a tactic that capitalizes on social divisions, further alienating individuals or groups and making them more susceptible to manipulation and suppression. When we're divided and isolated, we become more vulnerable, and it becomes easier for those in power to maintain control. But why is it crucial to understand these mechanisms of division and isolation? Well, understanding is the first step towards change. By recognizing these patterns, we can begin to challenge them, to break down the walls that divide us, and create a more united, inclusive society. This divide and rule strategy has been used extensively throughout history, from the colonial era to modern times. It's a tactic that's been employed by dictators and regimes across the political spectrum, seen as a victory in their quest for control. As we proceed, we will uncover the historical and contemporary examples of these phenomena. We'll delve into the effects of division and isolation on societies and individuals and explore potential ways forward. So stay tuned as we embark on this journey of discovery, understanding, and hopefully change. History, as they say, often repeats itself. This is particularly true when it comes to social divisions. As we delve into the annals of history, we can observe how social divisions have been strategically used as a means to dominate and control societies. The caste system in India, for example, is one of the earliest and most explicit forms of social division. This millennia-old system divided people into rigid hierarchical groups based on their work and duty. The division was so severe that it fostered systemic discrimination, making it difficult for those at the bottom to rise above their predetermined social status. Moving across the globe, we find another glaring example in the United States, with racial segregation being a monumental part of its history. The Jim Crow laws, enacted in the late 19th and early 20th century, enforced racial segregation in the southern states. These laws propagated the notion of separate but equal, a fallacy that led to the marginalization of African Americans and widened the racial divide. In Europe too, we find similar instances. Jewish ghettos in Nazi Germany were a horrific example of social division and isolation. Jews were systematically isolated and confined to specific areas, an act that served as a precursor to the Holocaust, one of the darkest chapters in human history. Even in more recent times, the apartheid era in South Africa stands out as an instance where social division was used as a tool of control. Racial segregation was institutionalized, dividing the population into 4 racial groups and creating a hierarchy of privilege and oppression. These historical instances give us a glimpse into how social divisions were systematically used as a tool of control. It's a sobering reminder that division in any form only serves to weaken societies, making them more susceptible to manipulation and control. And as we continue to navigate through our present times, it's crucial to learn from these lessons of history and strive for unity and equality, for the strength of society lies in its unity and diversity. Thank you for watching the video. Subscribe to the iHistory channel, like and share. Also, don't forget to activate the notification bell. Moving on from divisions, let's discuss isolation. Isolation in its many forms has often been employed as a tactic. It's a strategy used to dominate, control, and ultimately dismantle unity within societies. A stark example from history is the isolation of Jews during the Holocaust. The Nazis used isolation as a weapon, systematically segregating Jews from the rest of society, confining them to ghettos and concentration camps. This physical isolation, coupled with social and economic ostracism, served to dehumanize the Jewish community, making it easier for the Nazis to carry out their heinous genocide. Similarly, in South Africa, the apartheid system was a clear example of isolation being used to maintain power and control. The ruling class, a minority, enforced policies of racial segregation and economic discrimination against the non-white majority. By isolating different racial groups and fostering a culture of fear and mistrust, they managed to uphold an oppressive regime for almost half a century. In both cases, isolation was not an accidental byproduct, but a deliberate, calculated tactic. It was a strategy designed to break the spirit of the targeted groups, to make them feel less than human. It created an us versus them mentality, enabling those in power to justify their actions. But isolation doesn't always have to be as overt or violent as these examples. It can be subtle, creeping into societies under the guise of cultural differences, economic disparities, or political ideologies. It can be seen in the segregation of neighborhoods, the imbalance of wealth, or the polarizing rhetoric of leaders. These examples underscore the grim reality of how isolation can dehumanize and weaken communities. It's a stark reminder of what can happen when we allow divisions to take hold, when we let differences become walls that separate us. It's a call to recognize the tactics of isolation, to resist them, and to strive for unity in the face of division. Because history has shown us time and again that when we stand together, we are stronger. Thank you for watching the video. Subscribe to the iHistory channel, like and share. Also, don't forget to activate the notification bell. Fast forward to the present day and we still witness social division and isolation, albeit in more subtle forms. Consider the gender pay gap, a contemporary example of social division. Despite strides towards equality, women on average still earn less than men. This disparity isn't simply about numbers. It's a manifestation of a deeper societal divide, one that positions women as less valuable than their male counterparts. It's a divide that isolates women, rendering their contributions less visible, less acknowledged, less rewarded. Then we have racial profiling, a practice that's become worryingly prevalent. Individuals from certain racial or ethnic backgrounds are singled out, often unjustly, based on preconceived notions or stereotypes. This is a form of social division that isolates these individuals, separating them from the rest of society. It's a divide that breeds mistrust, fear, and resentment, perpetuating a cycle of division and isolation. Consider too the division between the rich and the poor. The wealth gap continues to widen, with the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer. This isn't just an economic divide, it's a social divide that isolates those on the lower rungs of the economic ladder, denying them equal access to opportunities and resources. It's a divide that marginalizes them, pushing them further into the periphery of society. Let's not forget the divisions based on sexual orientation. Despite progress towards acceptance and inclusion, prejudice and discrimination persist. Individuals who identify as gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender are often isolated, ostracized by a society that still struggles to fully embrace diversity. This is a divide that isolates them, relegating them to the status of other, separate from the mainstream. And then we have divisions based on culture and ethnicity. In an increasingly globalized world, you'd think that cultural and ethnic differences would be celebrated, not used as a basis for division. Yet, we still see instances where individuals are isolated due to their cultural practices or ethnic backgrounds. This is a divide that fosters misunderstanding and intolerance, sowing the seeds of division and isolation. These are just a few contemporary examples of social division and isolation. They serve as a stark reminder that despite the progress we've made, we still have a long way to go. These divisions and the resultant isolation aren't just harmful to the individuals directly affected. They are detrimental to society as a whole, undermining our collective strength, unity, and potential. These modern-day instances remind us that the legacy of division and isolation continues to persist. Despite our advancements and our evolution, we're still grappling with these age-old issues. It's a sobering reminder that we must continue to strive for a more inclusive, equitable, and united society. Only then can we hope to truly overcome these divisions and eradicate the isolation they breed. With these examples in mind, let's explore the effects of division and isolation on society. When a society is divided, whether by class, race, gender, or ideology, it becomes a breeding ground for discontent and conflict. The more fractured a society becomes, the more it's vulnerable to manipulation and domination. The division and isolation of groups within a society is like a ticking time bomb waiting to explode into social unrest. Consider this. When individuals are isolated, they're more susceptible to feeling marginalized and unheard. This feeling of marginalization can lead to resentment and anger, which can then erupt into social unrest. It's like a domino effect, one that starts with division and ends with discord. Now let's talk about discrimination. Division often leads to discrimination as differences become the basis for prejudice and bias. It's human nature to fear what we do not understand. Unfortunately, when society is divided along lines of race, class, or ideology, understanding becomes a rare commodity. This lack of understanding fuels discrimination as groups start to view each other with suspicion and mistrust. Such division and isolation also give rise to extremist ideologies. When people feel marginalized and unheard, they're more likely to be drawn to radical ideologies that promise change and recognition. These ideologies often thrive on division, promoting an us versus them mentality that further deepens the rifts in society. Moreover, division and isolation hinder the exchange of ideas and perspectives. In a divided society, dialogue becomes difficult, if not impossible. This lack of dialogue leads to a stagnation of ideas, preventing societal growth and progress. When people are isolated in their own echo chambers, their understanding of the world becomes skewed and one-dimensional. And let's not forget about the psychological effects of division and isolation. The constant tension and conflict can lead to a collective sense of anxiety and fear. This fear can permeate every aspect of society, affecting the mental health of its members. It's no wonder that societies marked by division often report higher levels of stress and mental health issues. In the grand scheme of things, division and isolation weaken the very fabric of society. They undermine the sense of community and shared identity that holds societies together. When people are divided, they're less likely to work together for the common good. Instead, they become focused on their own interests, often at the expense of others. So what's the result of all this division and isolation? A society that's riddled with conflict, discrimination, and fear. A society that's easy to manipulate and control. A society that's far from the ideal of unity in diversity. Undoubtedly, division and isolation not only weaken societies but also breed discontent and conflict. Now that we've understood the past and the present, it's time to look towards the future. In moving forward, unity must be our guiding light. It is through unity that we can rise above the divisiveness and isolation that have plagued our societies for far too long. Unity does not mean uniformity, but rather it signifies the recognition and appreciation of our diverse perspectives, cultures, and identities. Tolerance, too, plays a pivotal role in shaping our future. Tolerance is not merely about tolerating differences, it's about embracing them. It's about understanding that our differences make us unique, but they don't make us less human. It's about acknowledging that every person, regardless of their race, gender, social class, or sexual orientation, has an intrinsic value that must be respected. Understanding, however, is perhaps the most critical element in overcoming social division and isolation. Understanding requires us to step out of our comfort zones and engage with people who are different from us. It requires us to listen, not just with our ears, but with our hearts. It requires us to put ourselves in the shoes of others and see the world from their perspective. Understanding is the bridge that can connect our divided societies and bring us closer together. The future we envision is one where people are not judged by their skin color, their wealth, their gender, or their sexual orientation, but by the content of their character. It's a future where people are not isolated because of their beliefs, their culture, or their ethnicity, but are celebrated for their uniqueness. It's a future where the strategy of division and isolation is replaced by the strategy of unity, tolerance, and understanding. But this future is not just a dream, it's a possibility. It's a possibility that can be realized if each one of us takes responsibility and commits to promoting unity, practicing tolerance, and fostering understanding. It's a possibility that can be realized if we learn from our past, understand our present, and work towards creating a better future. The future can be different, but it requires us to learn from our past and work towards creating a more inclusive society. We've journeyed through the past, looked at the present, and envisioned a future free from division and isolation. We have dissected the ideologies that drive social division, the stratagems of isolation, and the intricate mechanics of control. The manipulation of divisions, whether they are based on race, class, gender, or culture, has been unveiled as a tool to weaken society and make it easier to dominate. This is a sobering reality, but it is also the first step towards change. We've seen how this divide and rule principle has played out in history and is still being used in our contemporary world. But we've also envisaged a future where unity triumphs over division, where understanding supplants isolation. This is a future we can build piece by piece, starting with the recognition of the divisive tactics at play. Thank you for watching this video. Subscribe to the History channel, like and share. Don't forget to activate the notification bell. Until next time, keep exploring history.